There's a drawer in your house right now filled with cables that don't connect to anything anymore. Lightning cables for phones you threw away 3 years ago. Chargers for laptops that still worked fine until the manufacturer stopped supporting them. Headphone adapters for a port that doesn't exist on your current device. You didn't lose these things. You didn't break them through carelessness. They were made obsolete by design. And if you've ever felt that low-grade frustration when you realize you need to buy the same basic thing for the third time in 5 years, not because it wore out, but because someone decided your perfectly functional version is no longer compatible with the world, then you've felt the edge of something much larger. My name is William, and I've spent years studying the invisible architecture of consumer economics. And what I've found is that there's a systematic transfer of wealth happening from your bank account to corporate balance sheets, and it's not through price gouging or obvious scams. It's through a much quieter mechanism. They've engineered the products you rely on to expire on schedule, forcing you into an endless cycle of repurchasing. And the math of what this costs you over a lifetime is staggering. Here's the thing most people don't realize. We assume that products break because technology advances too quickly for durability to keep up. We think, well, of course my laptop only lasts 4 years. The technology is evolving so fast that older models become outdated naturally. But that's not actually what's happening. What's happening is that companies discovered something extraordinary about human psychology and economic behavior. They discovered that you can make far more money selling someone the same thing 5 times than selling them a better version once. And once that realization took hold in boardrooms across America, the entire design philosophy of consumer goods shifted from longevity to planned failure. Let me take you back to a specific moment in economic history. 1954. General Electric has a problem. They've gotten too good at making refrigerators. The refrigerators they sold in the 1940s are still running in kitchens across America. Families are passing them down. Repair shops can fix them with basic tools and cheap parts. The market is saturated. Sales are stagnating. So GE brings in a consultant, an industrial designer named Brooks Stevens, and they ask him a simple question. How do we get people to buy new refrigerators when their old ones still work? And Stevens comes up with an answer that will reshape the entire consumer economy. He calls it planned obsolescence. The idea is elegant and ruthless. You don't build things to last as long as they can. You build them to last exactly as long as the warranty, plus maybe 6 months. You engineer a specific point of failure. And just as importantly, you change the aesthetic every few years so that even if the old model still works, it looks outdated. It signals to neighbors and visitors that the owner is behind the times. You're not just selling a product anymore. You're selling the anxiety of falling behind. Now, this strategy creates what I call a replacement tax. It's an invisible recurring cost that most people never calculate because it's spread out over years and disguised as normal consumer behavior. But when you add it up, when you actually track the cumulative cost of replacing things that could have been built to last, the numbers are brutal. Let's start with something small, your phone. Most people replace their phone every 2 to 3 years, not because the phone stops working, but because the battery degrades, the software updates slow it down, or the company stops supporting the operating system. The phone itself, the screen, the processor, the camera, could easily function for 7 or 8 years if it was designed with replaceable components and long-term software support, but it's not. So you spend, let's say, $800 every 3 years. Over a 30-year period, that's $8,000 on phones. Now, if phones were built like appliances used to be built, with replaceable batteries and modular parts, you might spend $2,000 total over that same period. The difference, $6,000, is the replacement tax. That's money extracted from you not because of technological progress, but because of deliberate design choices meant to shorten the product's usable life. Now, multiply that across everything you own. Your laptop dies after 5 years because the battery is glued in and the hard drive is soldered to the motherboard. You could have replaced those components for $200, but instead you spend $1,200 on a new machine. Your washing machine breaks after 6 years because a $15 plastic gear stripped, but the manufacturer designed it so you can't access that gear without voiding the warranty, and the repair costs more than buying new. Your headphones, your coffee maker, your television, your vacuum cleaner, every single one of them could have been built to last twice as long, and every single one of them is designed not to. When you add up the replacement tax across all of your possessions over a lifetime, you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars. Money that could have compounded in an investment account, money that could have bought you time, freedom, or security. Instead, it's been siphoned off by a system that profits from your stuff breaking. But here's where this gets psychologically devastating. This cycle doesn't just cost you money, it costs you mental energy. Every time something breaks, you have to research replacements. You have to compare models. You have to go through the friction of purchasing, setting up, transferring data, learning new interfaces. You're spending cognitive resources on consumption instead of creation. You're stuck in what I call maintenance mode. You're constantly fixing, replacing, upgrading, managing your stuff, and that mental load prevents you from focusing on bigger decisions, the decisions that actually build wealth. You're too busy dealing with your broken vacuum to think strategically about your career. You're too frustrated by your dying laptop to plan your next investment move. The replacement cycle keeps you reactive instead of proactive. Now, let me show you what happens when you opt out of this system. Let's say you're 30 years old and you make a decision. You're going to stop buying products designed to fail. Instead, you're going to research and invest in things that last. You buy a commercial-grade vacuum for $400 instead of a consumer-grade one for $150. The commercial model lasts 20 years. The consumer model lasts 4 years. Over 20 years, you would have bought the cheap vacuum 5 times. That's $750. So your $400 vacuum actually saved you $350, and you only had to go through the purchasing process once. Now apply that same logic to a dozen categories. You buy the laptop with user-replaceable components. You buy the washing machine from the brand known for 30-year lifespans. You buy the cast iron cookware instead of the non-stick pans that degrade after 2 years. You buy the mechanical watch instead of the smartwatch that becomes e-waste when the company stops updating it. Each individual decision feels more expensive at the moment, but over 10 years, you've spent maybe $15,000 on durable goods instead of $35,000 on disposable ones. That's $20,000 in savings, and more importantly, you've freed yourself from the mental burden of constant replacement. You're not researching vacuum cleaners every 4 years. You're not migrating data between laptops every 5 years. You've bought yourself time and headspace. But the system fights back against this approach. And this is where the conspiracy becomes overt. Companies have started actively preventing you from repairing the things you own. They use proprietary screws that require specialized tools. They void warranties if you open the case. They withhold schematics and replacement parts from independent repair shops. They lobby against right-to-repair legislation that would legally require them to make products fixable. Apple has argued in court that you don't actually own your iPhone, you own a license to use it. John Deere has remotely disabled tractors when farmers tried to fix their own equipment. This isn't just bad customer service. This is a coordinated effort to make durability illegal. They've realized that if you can fix it, you won't replace it. And if you won't replace it, their revenue model collapses. So they've turned repair into a crime. Here's the identity shift that needs to happen. You have to start seeing yourself as someone who owns things, not someone who rents them from corporations. When you buy a product, you should have the right and the ability to keep it functioning for as long as physics allows. That means buying from companies that publish repair manuals. That means choosing products with standard components instead of proprietary ones. That means learning basic maintenance skills. And yes, that means paying more upfront. But you're not paying more. You're just paying once instead of paying forever. You're exiting the subscription model of physical goods. Now, let me show you how this connects to larger financial security. Let's say you take that $20,000 you saved over 10 years by buying durable goods instead of disposable ones, and you invest it in a basic index fund. Assuming a 7% average annual return, that $20,000 grows to about $39,000 by year 20. By year 30, it's $76,000. By the time you're ready to retire, that single decision to opt out of planned obsolescence has generated over $100,000 in wealth. That's the power of redirecting the replacement tax. You're not just saving money, you're creating capital. And capital gives you options. It gives you the ability to say no to jobs you hate. It gives you the ability to take risks on projects you believe in. It gives you margin when life goes sideways. The person who spent their money replacing cheap junk doesn't have that margin. They're living paycheck to paycheck even if they earn a decent salary because their money is constantly bleeding out through 1,000 small cuts. Here's the part that makes me angry. The economy is structured to punish this kind of long-term thinking. Our entire GDP growth model is built on consumption velocity. If everyone suddenly started buying things that lasted, if we all stopped participating in the replacement cycle, the stock market would panic. Factory orders would drop, quarterly earnings would miss projections. The financial media would call it a recession. We've built an economic system that requires waste to function. It requires you to keep buying the same things over and over. And if you step outside of that system, if you choose durability over novelty, you're treated like you're hurting the economy. But you're not hurting the economy. You're protecting yourself from an economy designed to extract your wealth. There's a concept in economics called the paradox of thrift. It says that if everyone saves instead of spending, the economy contracts. But that's only a paradox if you think the economy exists to serve itself rather than to serve the people in it. The real paradox is that we've built a system where your individual financial health requires you to behave in ways that the system punishes. You have to choose. Do you want to be financially stable, or do you want to keep the GDP number going up? And the uncomfortable truth is that for most people, those two goals are in direct conflict. So, what does this look like in practice? It means you become a much more intentional consumer. When something breaks, your first question isn't, where can I buy a new one? It's, can this be fixed? If it can't be fixed, your second question is, why was this designed to be unfixable? And if the answer is corporate greed, you don't buy from that company again. You research, you find the brands that still believe in durability. They're out there, they're usually smaller. They don't advertise during the Super Bowl, but they exist. And when you find them, you pay the premium. Because the premium isn't an extra cost, it's prepaid savings. It's buying your way out of the replacement cycle. Let me tell you about someone I know. I'll call her Rachel. 10 years ago, Rachel was replacing her vacuum cleaner every 2 years. She was replacing her toaster every 3 years. She was upgrading her phone on schedule because the old one would mysteriously slow down right before the new model launched. She was caught in the cycle and she was frustrated but didn't see a way out. Then she had a moment of clarity. She calculated how much she'd spent on small appliances over the previous 5 years, and the number shocked her. Almost $4,000 on things that should have lasted decades. So she changed her approach. She started researching. She found the vacuum brand that repair shops recommend. She bought a toaster made of metal instead of plastic. She switched to a phone company that supports devices for 7 years instead of 3, and she held on to things, even when they looked outdated, even when friends asked why she wasn't upgrading. The first few years felt uncomfortable because the upfront costs were higher and the aesthetic wasn't trendy. But by year 5, something shifted. She stopped thinking about appliances. They just worked. And the money she used to spend on replacements started piling up in her investment account. By year 10, she had an extra $43,000 in assets compared to where she would have been on the old trajectory. Same income, same life, just different buying decisions. Here's what I want you to understand. Every dollar you spend replacing something that shouldn't have broken is a dollar stolen from your future. It's not dramatic. It's not a one-time theft. It's a slow, persistent leak that you've been conditioned to accept as normal. And the only way to stop the leak is to refuse to participate. You become the person who fixes things, the person who researches before buying, the person who values function over fashion. And yes, people will judge you. They'll ask why you're still using that old laptop. Why haven't you upgraded your car? Why do your kitchen appliances look like they're from another decade? And you let them wonder because you know something they don't. You know that looking current and being wealthy are often opposites. You know that the person with the newest stuff is usually the person with the least savings. You've chosen a different path. The final piece of this is teaching yourself to see marketing for what it is. Every ad you see for a new phone, a new car, a new appliance is trying to create a feeling of inadequacy. It's trying to convince you that your current thing is outdated, slow, embarrassing, insufficient. That's not an accident. That's strategy. The entire advertising industry exists to manufacture desire for things you don't need to replace things that still work. And once you see that, once you recognize the mechanism, it loses its power. You can watch an ad for the newest laptop, and instead of feeling the pull to upgrade, you feel gratitude that you're not falling for it anymore. You've built immunity. This isn't about being cheap. It's not about deprivation. It's about redirecting your resources toward things that actually matter, toward financial security, toward freedom, toward the ability to make choices based on what you want instead of what you can afford. The replacement tax is optional. You've been paying it because the system is designed to make it feel mandatory, but it's not. You can opt out. You can buy it once and use it for 20 years. You can fix instead of replace. You can ignore the pressure to keep up with product cycles. And when you do, when you step off that treadmill, you'll find that you have more money, more time, and more peace than you've had in years. 10 years from now, you're going to look around at the things you own, and you're going to realize that most of them still work. And you're going to check your investment account, and you're going to see a number that wouldn't have been possible if you'd kept replacing things on schedule. And you're going to feel something that most people never get to feel. You're going to feel like you won, not against other people, against a system designed to keep you broke. That's the prize. That's what's waiting on the other side of this decision, and it starts with the next thing that breaks. Do you replace it, or do you fix it? Do you buy the disposable version, or do you invest in the one that lasts? The answer to that question determines whether you're building wealth or funding someone else's quarterly earnings. Choose carefully.